In this podcast, we chat about the draw at Bournemouth, the defeat to Huddersfield. We look ahead to Swansea with Luke from the Swanscast Podcast. And of course, we answer your podcast questions. This is the Boro Breakdown Podcast, and this is our Boro Matchday Chatter in a pod.
Wants support. Curtis Fleming is there on the edge of the area. Fleming for Craig Hignett. Hit it, Higgy. Higgy hits the treble!
Avenelli coming alive again. Janino wants the ball played to him. Avenelli spots out Emerson!
Hello and welcome to the Boro Breakdown Podcast with Johnny, Dana and Tom. We are the Boro Podcast that gives you all of your Boro Matchday Chatter in a podcast. And just before we start this week, I just want to say, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Apple by pressing the plus button on our profile, and also on the same for Spotify as well. And don't forget to rate us too. We've got 430 reviews across Apple and Spotify. And how good would it be if we get to 500 before the end of the season? But now that's over. Let's chat about the Boro then, because the draw against Bournemouth and a 2-0 defeat against Huddersfield on Monday saw Boro drop to 9th in the Championship table with 4 games to play. Guys, as it's Easter weekend, I just want you to sum up how you're feeling as an Easter egg. Dana, you want to go first?
I'm going to go for a Turkish Delight Easter egg. Horrible and shite.
Oh, I didn't even know you could have a Turkish Delight Easter egg.
Well, I googled it. Apparently you can. I don't know who would buy that. Well, my dad would, but still. Awful.
This is where we're going to find like a load of Boro fans that love Turkish Delight Easter eggs.
Yeah, I'm going to get cancelled, aren't
I? Tom, how are you feeling as an Easter egg?
Well, I'm going to say something probably about as controversial as when I said I didn't like sauce last season or the season before, whenever it was Mendes Lang scored, but a cream egg Easter egg. For the same reason as Dana, they're absolutely horrible, and I wouldn't touch one. So, yeah.
Not having that, Tom.
I'm not having that either. That's disgusting behaviour. That's absolutely disgusting behaviour. I'll go
cream
with
eggs are one of the world's worst inventions. They are, I'm saying it.
Well, that's the Boro Breakdown Podcast. Thank you very much for listening. Okay, well, on that bombshell, Tom, I'm going to move on. And let's cover Bournemouth first. So, the start of the weekend, Boro travelled to Scott Park as Bournemouth. The Cherries were sitting second and still are. And Boro moved 1 point closer to the playoff places with a 0-0 draw at the Vitality. It wasn't really a good game, and nothing really happened on Good Friday. You can even describe it as a quiet Friday. But Dana, how would you assess the performance against Bournemouth?
Yeah, I was on the edge of my seat, not down to excitement, but because I couldn't see a thing. I mean, we had our dingy dark green away kit on, and there was a big shadow being cast on that side of the stadium, and it made it really uncomfortable to watch. It was difficult. But yeah, it was a very low quality football match, although I thought defensively we were okay, by the corner that Lerma hit the crossbar from. But again, so many players looked off it. Bowler's passing in the first half I thought was incredibly poor. Crooks has kind of continued to tank in form. Jones was struggling to impose himself. There was a few balls hit up towards him, crossfield balls from McNair that he just couldn't get under his spell. They flicked off his foot straight out for a throw in, and I mean, was Connolly even playing? It was it was a really, really strange afternoon, but it was a good point at the time. I'm happy we didn't roll over and get completely torn apart by Bournemouth, because to be honest, that's what I'm accustomed to seeing. But it was only a good point after that game. Not really so much a good point now after the result today against Huddersfield.
Yeah, and we'll come on to Huddersfield in just a moment. But Tom, it was a good point on the road. But do you think Boro could have got a little bit more against Bournemouth? They were definitely unlucky not to get a penalty as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say the penalties were the main talking points around if we should have got more, because I don't think other than that we did too much else, but I thought it was a solid performance otherwise. Definitely should have been penalties. There was, 2 incidents of handball on the same kind of passage of play, and I'm shocked at how the linesman didn't get either of them, considering they were right in front of him. But then again, I probably shouldn't expect referees to give an away penalty when it comes to playing at the Vitality, because the amount of times I've seen Bournemouth play there and just fall over and get penalties has been ridiculous. So, yeah, I mean, if we'd have got one of those, I could have seen it being kind of similar to that away game against Norwich in the playoff season. It would have been tense. I think we could have ground it out, but they were kind of really our main chances. And I mean, not even chances really, but half chances that we probably should have got a penalty from.
Yeah, and I'd agree with both your points there around like nothing really happened in the game. It was a solid performance, and I think the penalties as well, we should have probably had one or two. But then who won your poll, by the way, and who was most likely to dive? Just out of curiosity, before I move on to another question.
I think it was Todd Cantwell. On that, by the way, I've done that poll 2 times, and Adam Smith's always in there. And people always underestimate him. I feel like he's the one out that Bournemouth team that is susceptible to diving the most. He's just a little rat. So yeah, I think he was vastly underrated there in that poll.
He's the Tom Daly of Bournemouth. But let's move on slightly, because there was a performance which I think was worth writing home about, and that was Sol Bamba's performance. I think the 37-year-old who got man of the match has become quite a fan favourite on Teesside, and especially with the warm reception against Huddersfield as well. But Dan, have you been surprised how good Sol was and when he has played this season, especially on Friday?
Yeah, he was good on Friday. I wish I could praise him more, but then he followed that up with a not so good performance today against Huddersfield. But against Bournemouth, just looking at that in isolation, he was very good. It was a marvellous defensive display, really. And there was a moment where he picked it up and then he just ever so casually just worked the ball past, I think it was a pressing forward, it might have been Solanke, and it's good to see that from Sol, but it's just really unfortunate that he couldn't follow it up with another good performance. It was good though to see the reception that he got after the game at the Vitality. He was kind of overcome with emotion. I don't think he was quite expecting so much of a good reception, and to be honest, I think he has probably exceeded my expectations of him. When he signed, I wasn't really expecting much. I didn't even think he'd play at all, to be honest. Maybe a couple of appearances in the cup competitions, but in the games that he has played, I think bar today against Huddersfield, I think he has been at large quite dependable. But as I said, it's just a shame that he was probably one of the worst players on the pitch today. So yeah, the life of a footballer, eh?
Yeah, it's very much up and down. But I think overall, Tom, what's your thoughts on Sol? Yeah, obviously there is murmurs that it could be retiring at the end of the season, regardless. So, what was your thoughts on his performance on the Friday? And have your expectations been exceeded as well?
Oh, absolutely. Because I mean, I kind of did think we would be signing him as soon as he started training with us, and then he played that game for the under-23s against Redcar or something. I was like, yeah, Warnock's definitely signing him, isn't he? But as with Dana, like I didn't really expect him to play that much. I just expected that he would be signed. And then the first couple of games, I was, he had a great display against Sheffield United at home, I think. I was thinking, how is he still managing to kind of pull these performances out, especially after everything he's been through? Bournemouth game, I thought he was outstanding. I was a little bit worried for that game. With Solanke and the pace that Bournemouth have in their team, I was worried about how he might cope with it, but I thought he did exceptionally well. But then, as Dana said, it's a shame he's kind of followed that up with the performance today, because I was thinking about it. I was like, I'd love to really kind of praise him quite a lot, and potential praise and place nomination for later and stuff, and it does that today, and I'm like, it's the same as what happened last week. I think it was Tav or Boro last week, I think. Every time I get ahead of myself and think, oh, I'm going to put in the praise and place, it's to do something like that.
We might have to start calling it the curse place, I think, because everything that we do is we just curse people once we've praised them. But just before we move on to Huddersfield, then Matt Crooks picked up his 15th card of the season and is now missing for 3 games, 2 more, I appreciate, after the game against Huddersfield. Tommy, the one big disappointment from Bournemouth was him getting that suspension. And is it disappointing in the way that he's been consistent and picking up yellow card time after time after time?
Yeah, definitely. We've always had players who'll do it. You got to love kind of shit house player who's going to make a tactical foul and stuff. Adam Clayton was probably the prime example of it under Karanka. But it's just how silly some of the ones from Crooks have been with Clayton, or even with kind of like Morsey under Warnock. You could see at least there was a reason for it, but there's been some of the yellow cards that have just been a bit kind of clumsy on his part, and he just needs to work that out with his game.
Do you think that with Piero coming back in the under-23s, I think it was the day before, he played 45 minutes there, do you think that there is a chance that Piero, if he is fit, that he can stake the claim for the shirt in the last couple of games?
I'd like to see it. I was thinking second half today after we were 2-0 down, kind of, right, season's over now, so who do we kind of play for the next few games? I mean, personally, I was thinking of the top two. I'd be playing Coburn and Watmore as the only two who are going to be here next season. But then I was also thinking I'd play Piero on the right hand side of the three. He's got a couple of games now where Crooks is suspended. They can potentially force his way in. But also, I'd really expect that next season would be one where he can kick on. So, as long as he is fit enough to play them, I think it'd be worth kind of getting him more acclimated to this system ahead of next season.
Okay, then. Well, let's move on to Monday then in the game against Huddersfield, because Boro welcome playoff rivals Huddersfield to the Riverside, and goals from Naby Sarr and former Boro striker Jordan Rhodes, who scored for the first time at the Riverside, and also has 2 goals in 30 games, and gave the Terriers a 2-0 win at the Riverside. And that curse was brought to you by Dana Malt, the Malt curse, the official curse.
I didn't actually say it on the podcast though. I didn't actually say it on the podcast though. It was on our group chat. I was like, oh yeah, and John Rhodes has never scored against Middlesbrough. There we go. John Rhodes has scored against Middlesbrough.
This won't be the first time you hear. This won't be the first time you hear of the Malt curse in this podcast, but we'll move on. But the one obviously big change that we've seen on for Bournemouth, and it was again on Huddersfield today, was Luke Daniels being in goal. Tom, do you think that change now is it? Yeah, that's the only change we're going to see. Daniels is going to stay in goal, and probably no more Joel Lumley to the end of the season.
Well, I mean, who knows? If Daniels does something similar to what Lumley's done, he might get dropped as well. But the last couple of games, I can say I've got really kind of no complaints with him. I thought it was a big decision for Wild to make on Friday. I thought it proved the right one at the time. And then today, I don't think there was too much he could have done against either goal. I did think today the indirect free kick, very, very brave in charging that down as a goalkeeper, and I thought he did really well in stopping it. But no, I'd expect him to be there till the end of the season now, barring any kind of like major mishaps, in which case we might actually see Solbren. But he's not done a lot wrong in the last couple of games. Personally, he's done better than I expected him to, because that spell he had earlier in the season, I still kind of went for, Lumley was still higher in my opinion up until a couple of games ago than he was. But no, he's come in and done well, so he should keep the gloves for the rest of the season.
With that, then, Dana, it was the second time that Joel Lumley's been dropped. Once by Neil Warnock and now by Chris Wilder. It's not very good for the confidence, is it?
It isn't, but to be honest, it is deserved, because you have to account the errors that he's made so far in a Boro shirt have kind of outweighed probably any other goalkeeper, or what a goalkeeper normally would in maybe 3 seasons. It's unbelievable, the mistakes and the points that he's cost. I'd say maybe 5 or 6 points have probably been lost as a result of goalkeeping errors. And I mean, you could probably double that for blunt strikers and blunt finishing this season, which we'll probably get onto. But it's no surprise, really. Lumley's a number 2. He's just a number 2 goalkeeper in every sense, and we picked him up being the number 2 goalkeeper for QPR. And I must say, a very poor side in QPR defensively anyway, one of the worst in the Championship the season before we brought him in, and I think we pretty much got what was expected. He was loaned out to Gillingham and Doncaster in the league below, which pretty much says it all. It's yeah, I don't know. To be honest, looking back at Lumley's signing, I'm really surprised that he came in as a number 1, because I kind of thought at the time he'd be our number 2. But it is what it is. I don't think we'll see him again this season.
Yeah, I'd agree with you as well. I think I agree with both of your opinions too around Daniels. He's been relatively quite safe over the last 2 games. And I think today, I don't think he has a chance for either goal, to be honest. But let's move on to the overall performance then, and how we would assess things, because it was a big result for both sides, pretty much cementing Huddersfield in the playoff places, and then also for Boro to drop down to 9th as well, and with Millwall moving to 7th place. And of course, as we're recording this, Sheffield United are currently playing too, but we'll come to that in a little bit later on in the show. But in terms of the overall performance, guys, I kind of want to hear your assessment on it, and give me your overviews before we start breaking down the goals and so forth like that. But Dana, how would you assess that performance against Huddersfield?
Just blunt as buggery again. I mean, it was a make or break game for us, and we broke. We had 11 corners in the match, so many opportunities from set pieces, and very little created from them. And Huddersfield obviously scored from 1. They are very potent. They're the most efficient team from set pieces in the Championship this season. And it made me think about how pathetic we are from them. I mean, we have the kind of bog standard corner kick routines, the outswinger, the inswinger, short corner, changing the angle. And then I looked at Huddersfield, the movement in the box from sort of outside the 18-yard box to inside it. I just think it's I think it says a lot. It brings up a lot of questions. But as for the performance as a whole, we had all the possession, didn't we? But very little conviction. It was almost as if we took Scott Parker's tactical handbook from the game down at Bournemouth and decided to play with his methods of football. It was really disappointing. And I mean, that was their first win here since January 1986. We probably should have expected it, to be honest, because those runs always have to end at some point. But yeah, it was just very toothless up front again. I mean, our last few XG performances, 0.52 against Hull, 0.64 against Bournemouth, 0.72 against Huddersfield. We're not creating meaningful chances. And you only have to look at the Fulham game, 1.53 expected goals in that game, 2 expected goals against Peterborough. The past 3 games, our creativity has just almost disappeared. And I think that's a massive, massive red flag. And it's just, it's really disappointing. I feel so flat after that game today.
Yeah, I'd echo that as well. Tom, just how were you echoing Dana's thoughts there as well? Are you a bit worried about the lack of goals too in the last 3 games?
Yeah, I mean, I found myself in the second half thinking, when was the last time I actually saw a score? Yeah, it's a bit of a worry, and just really disappointed after that one, especially because I was saying on the way out from the ground, I haven't watched it back yet, but it didn't feel to me like they really outplayed us. Like, we've seen a couple of 2-0s at the Riverside where we've lost in the last month. It would have been easier to take if it was similar to the Chelsea game, where it was like, okay, it was fair enough. It was a better team that played through us. But we had so much of the ball, and we didn't seem to have any ideas on how to actually create any chances. I'm getting concerned about the right-hand side because everyone seems to have figured out how to play against Jones now. It did seem like every time he got the ball against Huddersfield, there were either 2 or 3 people on him. At that point, it definitely reminded me of what happened to Adama when he was playing for us. And I don't know, a bit worried about the left-hand side as well, because although we do look more attacking with Bowler in that position than Neil Taylor, we don't seem to fashion any chances with decent substance from that side, which was a concern, and nothing really from the middle as well. But I was thinking about what might be causing it, and I feel like some mental fatigue might be setting in on the players after such a kind of long campaign. There were times in the second half, I'm thinking, because I was looking straight down the pitch at it. There were runs from, say, Spry, Watmore, Coburn up front. And say if Howson was running through midfield, there would be a gap, and if he was a little bit quicker, he could have played it through that gap, through the channel, and one of the strikers would have had the chance in the box to at least get a shot off. And those passes from centre midfield just weren't happening, or if they were happening, they were to carve more space down the wings, which would then get cut out when the ball's crossed in. And it seemed like every time we were kind of fashioning a half chance to have a shot, that we're getting someone to block it. So yeah, I think we've kind of been well and truly found out on how we attack now. And I don't think the mental fatigue from the players will be helping much either, which is why I'm kind of more in favour of, for the next few games, playing the players that will be here next season, but also probably have a point to prove them, more like the likes of Coburn and Piero, just because they will be a little bit fresher in that mindset, I think.
I think with both your points around like being found out offensively, there clearly has been a pattern from an away side who come at the Riverside. The defensive blocks have become a bit more rigid, a bit more low block, and I feel like with Boro, the tempo hasn't been as strong as you kind of want it to be. I think, especially when you're on the ball and you've got possession, you're playing against these type of sides. I think the way you dictate the play means it means a lot, really. I think with what Boro are trying to do and get the ball outside of Jones, why are we taking so long to distribute that ball over? They're able to get into shape a lot quicker. They're able to get the 2 or 3 men onto Jones, make things difficult for him, and then he's not going to be taking on players as what you'd probably see him earlier in the season when we were moving the ball a little bit quicker, getting him out wide. It was one-on-one versus the defender. He was able to take him on and get a good ball in the box. Now it's a bit slower and a bit more. Feel like we just need an extra gear or two to try and get the ball moving a little bit quicker. But I think today was a prime example of when we were moving the ball at a slow pace, and I think even McNair to be really critical and the need for a left centre half. I think when every time McNair got the ball, he shifted on his right foot and then moved it over to Baller, and that split second and that 1% difference is so big in football. I think we have to work a little bit quicker on the ball, but then also don't be afraid to play through a side and give a direct pass through. I think sometimes we've played it. I think I can echo Wilder and say that we played it too safe at times, and I fully agree with what he said about it, because when we had the opportunity to try and play forward, we didn't. We stopped and played sideways, and it's easy to defend against. If you've got a good shape about you, you're playing a low block, you're going to nullify Boro's attacking threat. And what we were doing as well, it was starving our strikers of probably any chance of any service, really. And I think we'll come on to that in a second. Actually, no, let's go on to it now then, because it's been what, with all the possession that we've had in the last 3 games, it's 1 point from 4 games, but then also with all the possession without one of a goal. Why do you think we are struggling to find the net end? Do you think it's kind of that slow tempo, or do you think is there a bit more to it?
I think I echo what Tom says about the fact that we've been found out. It was always going to happen because, of course, clubs have video analysts. They'll know how potent a threat we have down that right-hand side. And there's just absolutely no way that we could have continued the rest of the season just kind of not coasting, but enjoying so much success down that right. You're going to get teams that are going to double, even triple up on us. I think Sheffield United did it really effectively, where they had 3 men on Jones, and it was really difficult to break through. But I completely agree with what you were saying there, Johnny, about the lack of quickness to our play. There was a moment where Sol Bamba tried to up the tempo in the first half, and then it just got slowed right back down again. And it was just, I don't know, people talk a lot about the urgency and things like that, but I just feel like that difference to, I don't know, pull a player out of position, that quick, incisive decision making in the final third is so important that we just haven't had. And as I said, with the XG, people will hate XG, and that's absolutely fair enough. But I think it's a good metric to weigh up the quality of chances that we've had. And I think overall, under Chris Wilder, the creating chances hasn't been a problem. But the past 3 XG numbers are a big worry. I mean, 0.52, 0.64, 0.72. It's not good. And I think Wilder said after one of the games, I think it might be in Reading at home, he doesn't want the plan B to be just hoofballs forward. To be honest, I've kind of seen that of late, and I'm just wondering. And for the game today, I thought shift it to a 3-4-3, because with Crooks out suspended, you probably have a prime opportunity there to rejig our attacking structure. I've said on the podcast that Connolly's a wide forward. I think Balogun's would be good as a wide forward as well, although I can kind of see him as almost the support striker, the link striker in a 2, maybe in the David McGoldrick role. But I just don't see the benefit of that forward line. And somebody said it, the guy in front of me in the match said it today, that you could probably pick our strikers out of a hat. And that's it. There's no one striker that's really stake to claim. It's just we're always looking at the best of a bad bunch, aren't we? And I think we've been found out. The plan A is kind of breaking down. We don't really have a plan B. And in regards to today's performance, just the tempo against they were playing 2 banks of 4 at points during the game. We just could not break through. And yeah, I think teams have done their homework on us, and unfortunately, we have no we have no move to counter that.
Yeah, and as the game goes on and teams start to get a bit more confidence in the game, they know we're not breaking them down. That's when they're starting to come into games. I think Hull's a prime example where that low block turned to a mid block, and that mid block became a bit more aggressive, and then they're able to really dictate the play and get on top of us in that game. But Tom, why do you think Boro is struggling as well? Would you echo Dana's thoughts there around the rotation side of things? What do you think it is?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just that we have been kind of found out a little bit, but also just to go back to what I said earlier about the kind of mental fatigue. I noticed I didn't really kind of give any examples on that because I was rambling at the time, but we've seen many examples of it in the last few games where passes will be going behind a player rather than into the path. There were points today, not to kind of single him out because I think he has been one of our better players recently, but the ball was getting cleared off a free kick or a corner. I think there was no one pressuring. There was no one in our half, but like Dykestill's jogging back to get the ball. And, there was some of the corners that Howson and Tav were taking. They were just taking a little bit too long to get there. And like, there's no real kind of urgency to get the ball back into the box or up the tempo or anything like that. It just seems like that. Like I said, that mental fatigue might be setting in, but also that might be affecting us when we get into these attacking positions as well, in that we have no kind of creative thinking for a plan B. I think we do in kind of fits and starts. I think, like Tav and McGree try things, but when they do, no one's kind of really on the same wavelength, and it doesn't really come off. So I think that might be one of the main issues at the moment.
But it's always been a problem, though. Sorry, Johnny. It's always been a problem, though, our sort of lack of clinical edge. And it's a catch-22, really, because sometimes we'll have it that our creativity is fine, but we just can't finish our dinner. And then it'll be the other way around. And it's like, why do we consistently have this problem where we just cannot be a team that, is ruthless and clinical? And I was looking into it the other day, Boro goals versus the top half league average over the seasons, and in three of the last 5 seasons that we finished in the top half, we've fallen below the top half league average goal scored. The worst one was in 2018-19, where we scored 49 goals in that Tony Pulis team, and the top half league, the top half league average goal scored for that season was 71. It's just constantly we've had 2 of the most potent goal scorers in Championship history at the football club. We've had coaches that have scored plenty of goals throughout their careers, Robbie Keane, James Beattie. We just cannot be a team that sorts this problem out. If it's not the forwards being erratic, it's the creativity being a problem. If the creativity is fine, it's the forwards being erratic. It's It's really frustrating, isn't it? That again, this problem's reared its head. I will say, and I'll echo my point. Overall, in Chris Wilder's tenure, the creativity hasn't been a problem. It's just the last 3 games, again, it's reared its head, which is unfortunate. And I think it definitely has made me feel a lot less confident about our playoff hopes.
I'm looking forward to seeing what we do in terms of the strikers next season. As I mentioned earlier, there's only really Coburn and Watmore who will still be here, unless we're planning giving Uche and Akpom a run in the team as well. But I'd assume we have plans in the summer to replace the lone strikers who will leave, and then hopefully more permanent options and stuff. But just I think that's one of the main areas that Wilder's needed to address in this system. Just looking forward to seeing who we get, and hopefully an improvement on how clinical we can be.
Yeah, and I think it's also the way that it's to be honest, I think this position that we're in, with the 3 times that we haven't scored, it's where Wilder will make his money, because he has to refine this attacking strategy. He has to refine the way we play. He has to identify the patterns of play that aren't being as effective as they have been in previous weeks. I think our goal average XG dinner must be 1.8 or 2.
You know what? I looked at our XG yesterday in terms of an XG table. We're second for that. So we are massively, massively underperforming in that metric. And I'm going to say I don't want to single him out. I'm going to single him out anyway. Spara is particularly wasteful when it comes to that.
Yeah, mostly Spara, and then you obviously got Connolly not scoring goals either. And it's difficult, but I think Boro's offensive line has really taken a hit for like the last few weeks, and we do create chances, we're just not putting them away. And like you said in there, Dinner, when it does dry up, do we have that bit of magic that can really can break a game down? I think under Karanka, when we had Ramirez, where things were sideways, the tempo wasn't there. You had I know it's really cliche to say you have that bit of magic, but when Ramirez got the ball, once you do have that little bit of magic at times, you can break teams down. And that one goal, I think for Boro, if we were able to score first today, score first against Fulham, score first against Hull, we're talking a completely different story, because I think we go on to win those games more convincingly. I don't think the team's played us off the park in the last few games. I think we've kind of been our own downfall. And Tom, when you're on about mental fatigue as well, defensively, and I'm going to break this goal down, which Huddersfield scored today. It's the first one. And going into the game, the Terriers actually had 16 goals from set plays this season. And I'm going to quickly change our camera angle as well to see if I can get this up. Let's see if we can do it. So moving in this one, we're going to the first one. So before even a ball's being kicked, there's so many errors in this goal. And it's all down to cause and effect. And just before we start, we can talk about the lines, and then also we can a little bit move it further forward as well. And we're looking at the way that Middlesbrough's defensive line is actually shaped up, and I'll go into more of like a full screen for the people that are watching it. So before it's being kicked, and the reason why I'm on about cause and effect is because a cause and an effect is where someone who would probably give the ball away, as an example, he's gave the ball away, and a lot of fans will go, well, he's the main problem. He's the cause of the issue, when really he's not, because it could be he could have given the ball away because of three attacking players could have been blocked off by other people. He's dilly-dallying on the ball, and he's gave away from that. But anyway, on the set piece, on the 2 clips I showed before this, before I've paused it, I thought at first Chris Wilder was really, really harsh to say that, we shouldn't really have a 3-man wall here. We should have had more of a 2. And I thought, maybe let's have a look at it. Let's dig into it. And I'm looking at the distance from the actual free kick. It is very, very far out, this free kick. There is not a chance that they're going to probably have a shot from about 35 to 40 yards here. So this is clearly going towards the back post. It's an in-swinger. We know it's going to a difficult area. With that, you could probably say that when you're looking at Boro's defensive line as well, 3 men are in the line. If you take one man out that wall, you actually have a much more structured defensive line. And then that also stops everyone. Like, everyone has one man. Everyone's man marked. When you look at Boro's philosophy is when they do defend set pieces, they do man mark. They're quite reluctant to do a zonal mark, and they do it to some extent. But man marking is kind of our philosophy. That's how we wanted to do it. We're a bit more aggressive on that. That defensive line is really, really poor. And when we're looking at probably that first clip, we're on the edge of our box. Duncan Watmore's pointing to a free man at the back post, and also we've got 3 men in the wall, and we've also got 2 people at the back. So we've created, there's clearly an overload at the back post here. So when we're looking at probably that clip too, Duncan Watmore's pointing, he's saying, "Oh guys, look, there's an overload on the back post," and Sol Bamba drops deep because of this. But not only that, when we're looking at Riley McGree, he's ball watching, and there's also, if you want to be a little bit further down the line as well, which is probably this clip here. When you're looking at Boro's defensive line, there's about 4 or 5 Huddersfield players ahead of Boro players already. So before the ball's even being kicked, we're already out of possession. We're already out of position. But then also, Huddersfield lines, attacking lines, are already in front of ours. So this has caused a lot of issues already before the ball is even being kicked, and this is where the effect comes in. So all that cause of the overload at the back post, the 3 men against the wall, Watmore not picking up a man, has caused that overload and that effect. So Bamba, what he does is, bless him, he drops deep, and he drops really deep. And the reason why he does it, I think he's trying to do 2 things here. One, he's trying to get leverage because he thinks the ball's going to probably come deep, but not as deep as he expects it to go. So he can try and get a running on the header and try and even knock it out to where Watmore is, or try and get out for a corner kick. But it doesn't. It goes a little bit deeper. And as Middlesbrough haven't picked up the extra men out wide, it's very, very easy for Huddersfield to get the ball headed back in, and then Naby Sarr is actually by himself, and then easy 1-0 to Huddersfield. And I think that when you look at philosophy of set pieces, and you want to start to really delve deeper, and you want to go back into the Bournemouth game, with Middlesbrough having that aggressive man marking system, very, 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 very simple, basic is mark your men, get goal side, something that very, very basics of football. If we did have 2 men in the wall, we were able to probably attribute that. But also, if you really want to be like picky, if Matt Crooks did not get a card against Bournemouth, I don't think this goal actually happens either, because he's going to be probably marking at the back post with Sol Bamba. And then also with that as well, I think when looking at defensive shape and that defensive line, it's so poor. I think for me, you can have 3 lines. You can either go on the penalty spot and be really, really deep, and that's if you have more like taller players, which tends to say, go on, knock it in, we'll hope for the best. But then you can also have that mid one between the penalty spot and the edge of the penalty box. But Boro was so aggressive; they tried to stand on the penalty box, and I feel like with us having more attacking players on the pitch and also being relatively quite small, I feel like we've kind of shot ourselves in the foot there, and we've just give away a really, really soft goal. But there's just so many things you can point out in this goal: the man marking, the line, Bamba's body position. You can even look at players looking at the ball. You can also, if you really want to go into more depth as well, you can actually start looking at body shape. But I feel like we just probably won't have time to do that. But the actual body shape of the players as well, where they're all standing still and they all turn around and they're all flat-footed, you can even look at that as well. And I feel like it's just such a disappointing goal to give away. And, you know, it's very easy to probably defend against that, but Middlesbrough haven't. And I feel like that's kind of a shown and a sign of mental fatigue defensively as well, and really bad organisation too. But, you know, that is part and parcel of the game, and a team that scored 16, now 17 set pieces this season. And pretty much I think they are best in the league for that now, is it?
They are, yeah. Well, they were anyway, yeah.
So for me, I think it's really poor. But that now, Middlesbrough have only picked up 1 point in the last 4 games. Are we actually putting that down to mental fatigue then? Are we putting it down to being found out? Do you think that is the catalyst for Boro's form? Or are we putting it down to something completely different? Is it Chris Wilder going to Burnley rumours? Is he the reason why we're losing games now? But in terms of the defeat, how are your playoff chances now? Do you think it's pretty much done and dusted, Dan? And you're kind of like, right, let's leave it to next season. But there is still a chance.
Yeah, there is still a chance, and it is still mathematically possible. And I suppose whilst that is the case, I don't want to be completely doom and gloom here, but from what I've seen the past 3 games, in fact, even the Fulham game as well, we had chances in that, we couldn't put them away. it's a massive, as I've said, a massive red flag, the fact that now we can't really even create anything meaningful. And I know Sheffield United are playing as we're recording. People obviously know the result when they're listening to this. But I think even if Sheffield United drop points, focusing on our own game for a second, I can't really see us doing the business for ourselves, because I don't know where the goals are going to come from. We've been found out on that right-hand side. I don't think as much has been offering up on the left. I think it's fading out. If there was a loading screen, it would probably be on maybe like 85% done in terms of our playoffs. But it was interesting. Wilder said after the game, it's sort of unraveling in terms of players that will be good enough to take us through on the journey. And he talks a lot about the journey. He basically said that this game was a big indicator of who's going to be a part of that and who isn't. And I think there's an awful lot of players that you could say that were on that pitch today that there's question marks over them.
Okay, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, just to pick up on Dana's last point there, I think we're probably in for a bit of a restructure in the summer. But in terms of playoff chances, I'd say it's very unlikely now. I said earlier on, even though I was joking, season's over now, we may as well be playing everyone else. I mean, it is still mathematically possible. So I don't think we will kind of give up until it isn't. But I don't have much hope for it, to be honest. I'd be amazed if we got into sixth now. I mean, Sheffield United currently drawing 1-1 with Bristol City. Maybe they might drop points there, but they have just equalised, so you'd think momentum's in their favour there. Yeah, I don't think we'll do it now personally, but I still think by the Swansea game we'll be putting out a full strength team to try and win that game. Obviously, as you'd expect, every game from the football club, but it's not mathematically over yet. I don't think we're going to manage it this year now.
Okay, then. Well, let's just before we move on to questions, I just want to quickly give a shout out to our sponsor and our charity that we're working with this year. It's Motor Neurone Disease Association. We've raised over £2,000, and that was our initial target for the season. We've raised above that, so thank you very much for donating. But we have raised it ever so slightly because we just want to raise a little bit more for a fantastic charity, and also we will be working with them next season as well, which we're really, really happy about. But let's talk about questions, and the questions from you guys, where you can send it in via Twitter at the Boro_breakdown, or email the BoroBreakdown@hotmail.com, or join our Telegram chat where over 150 Boro fans are in there chatting all things Middlesbrough Football Club. And as I was looking at the chat earlier, we were chatting about Chris Wilder's future, but we'll come to that a little bit later on. First question, Tom, I'm going to come to you first. Is from Ben, and it's something that we've been chatting about on the podcast already. He says, are we being unfair criticising our strikers when we aren't creating clear chances?
I can definitely understand that argument, and why people would think that. I don't think it's unfair criticising anyone in the team at the moment. At the same time as we're not creating anything, they could be playing a bigger part in creating something. Strikers' only role isn't just to score goals. We might expect a bit of link-up play to help get them into those positions in the first place. I just think it's that link's lacking a little bit between midfield and striker at the moment. So I don't think it is too unfair to criticise them for not having clear chances, because at the same time they're not doing their part in helping create them.
Okay, then we're going to stick with the strikers chat, because Rob Wilson sent us a question on Twitter, and it says, how much of an impact has Wilder's determination to rotate the strike force impacted on Boro's lack of identity in the final third? Everyone else has pretty much had their place nailed down regardless of dips in form or fixture congestion, apart from the front two. Surely that must impact on how the team prepares for games, also knowing what runs players are likely to make in the final third. You look at any teams in the playoff places and they all have identifiable strikers and strike forces. Dana, do you think rotation is hindering Boro's attacking threat?
Potentially, yeah. I mean, I keep thinking back to when he dropped Balogun and Connolly for the for the Fulham game, but particularly Balogun. I didn't actually realise this at the time, but he was technically our most informed striker in terms of goals return. He'd scored 6 goals in 7 games for both club and country, and then he was rotated, shall we say, against Fulham. Obviously, scored his first goal against Sheffield United, then blanked against Millwall, scored again against Birmingham the next game, blanked against Chelsea, scored 3 goals on international duty for England under-21s, then scored against Peterborough after the international break. And I feel like there's been a big conversation about our strikers, isn't it? And I said earlier, it's kind of picking the best of a bad bunch, but I just feel like with Balogun, I do believe in him. And I know he's raw, he's young, he's a baby footballer, really. This is his first loan spell outside of the PL2, but I feel like we should have kept him in the team. And I feel like I know why Chris Wilder, or I can maybe guess why Chris Wilder had Sporar and Watmore in for the Fulham game to run the channels. But Balogun was in good goal scoring form, and we need a goal scorer. So I understand he obviously came back for the game against Hull. And I must say he was poor in that game. He was anonymous, but you're probably going to get that from a young, raw, inexperienced striker. I would have loved to have seen us persevere with Balogun in particular. But yeah, I feel like this is potentially a bit of a weakness of Wilder's, because I'm pretty sure it was the case at Sheffield United as well, maybe even at Oxford. Probably have to look into that a little bit more, but he does seem to be quite heavy on strikers. I've seen from quite a few Championship fans who kind of said that Chris Wilder just stacks up on the strikers and kind of hopes for the best. But yeah, potentially. But then the players that have played, I suppose they haven't exactly shone. They haven't spotlighted themselves as strikers to play consistently. So yeah, it's annoying, isn't it?
Very annoying. Very annoying indeed. The next question's from David, and he says, how many of the current squad do you think will remain this summer? And how many will we get rid of? I predict we will see at least 9 or more, even 11, more likely 11. So how many do you think will stay this season? How many do you think will go? Well, let's do a number. Tom, what do you think?
I'm trying to think of a number off the top of my head here, just from how many people I think will go. I can't see any of the loan players signing on for another year. I don't think Peltier will come back for another year. I think at least one of the goalkeepers will go. I think Stojanovic might finally get his move as well, because he's still on loan, isn't he, somewhere?
I think they do have an option to make it permanent. Oh my God, who is it? Ingolstadt. That's it, Ingolstadt.
Uche and Akpom, I think, will go.
Spencer's probably going to leave as well.
Spence,
when
yeah.
he comes back. You've got Saul Bamber out of contract too. I think Johnny Howson has one more year.
Yeah, I mean, Bamber and Howson, I don't know about. I mean, Bamber might retire, but both Warnock and Wilder have said about the impact that Bamber and Peltier have had in the dressing room. I don't know if that might be enough to kind of keep him around. And Howson, I would expect to get another year, but I don't think he'll be first choice next season.
Yeah, well, certainly he has that year anyway. So I mean, maybe I don't maybe let go the year after maybe, and then see how he fares. But yeah, there's just so many that you can probably get rid of. But then it's such a big job, isn't it? I think in the summer, I think it's kind of like an underestimated job that we have, because we have a lot of strikers to probably bring in, competition for players, and we said that a lot on the last podcast as well, and not that big picture, and trying to bring in players for a resale value too. The next question is from Josh. He says, should Taylor be at the back in that left wing back position? Ball has been poor since he came back in that wing back position. Essentially that's how the question. So it's more of a, do you think Taylor should be in for Baller? Dana, do you want this one?
I don't know. I think this is another potential problem position, because it was probably only a couple of episodes ago that we were kind of saying that we're maybe a little bit too conservative with Taylor in the side, and we need Bowler in there for balance between the right and the left. I think Bowler's a strange one. I really, really, really want to be convinced by him, but I'm just not. I think I was kind of thinking when Wilder came in, it'd be a big it would be a big moment for Boro to kind of convince, and I just feel like there's still a lot of question marks. He just blows hot and cold for me, and there's a good player in there somewhere, but I just think with the summer rebuild, what we on 6.0 now? Unbelievable.
Rebuild 12.6 or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. That he could potentially be upgraded. I've mentioned Connor Grant from Plymouth on the podcast before. Probably perfect for the way that we play, given that he's played in that position for Ryan Law's Plymouth and Stephen Schumacher's Plymouth now as well. I don't know. I don't think we should put Taylor back in, but I don't know. I don't think we should put Taylor back in, but Boro definitely does need to step up.
I love Black Boro, but he was poor.
I know you do.
He was poor there. But the next question was from Teesside Teacher and say Middlesbrough could still make the playoffs and get promoted. Should we? And on a really good day, we just hold our own against Premier League quality teams, but most of the time we're nowhere near. Do we need another season in the Championship under Wilder? I'm going to take this. I'm going to say, can we make it? Absolutely. We can still make the playoffs. Can we get promoted still? There's anything can happen in the playoffs. Whether I think it's a bit unlikely that we do, but do we need another season in the Championship? Like I've said probably numerous times on the podcast, that big picture, Middlesbrough are going to be in a really positive place. I think regardless of whoever manager is going to be in next or whatever structure that we're going to have, I think the future is really bright. I think Middlesbrough are changing the way that they operate off the pitch, and I think that you want to see the fruits of that on it probably in the next 18 months. I think you'll probably see a really good Middlesbrough side, regardless of what division we're in. I think obviously Championship or Premier League. But the next question is from Chris. He says, what do you think is going on behind the scenes? It's happened before towards the end of the season when we just lack creativity and drive to move the ball forward. And also he alludes to the wilder truth as well around potentially that Burnley. Because let's have a very 1 minute on it. Chris Wilder was linked with the Burnley job. Obviously, there's always going to be a rumour kicking about. The odds across the betting apps did decline to him as to be a favourite. And for someone who knows the industry of gambling, I can categorically say that it is all user behaviour focused, and the only reason that bookies become favourites is because people put their fivers on it at high prices, which bring the odds down and make people favourite, which generate talk. So don't follow the bookies and don't gamble. Don't throw your money away. But any truth in Wilder going to Burnley? Can you potentially see it? No. Yes. Tom?
I mean, why would you want to? Like, you saw wooden seats in the stadium and TVs made in 2003. Why would you want to give to the Riverside for that?
You only have 5 channels. What's going on?
Don't even have that anymore because you can't have the 5 channels anymore, can you? It'll just be static on their screens. But no, I think Wilder's in it for the long haul. He's talked a lot when he came in about kind of building the project, and as Dana mentioned earlier, he's still been saying kind of in his interviews about the journey and who's on the journey and stuff like that. I think he's looking at this long term, and I don't think he would go to Burnley. I'm trying to think last time we had a manager who people actually wanted, but I can't remember if anyone ever tried to come in for Karanka or not. But I think it's all just kind of, as you say, people putting daft money on it and talk coming off the back of that. I don't think there's too much in it. Touch wood, because I really don't want that to be true. But also, I would hope that on the slim chance that it is true, this new kind of structure that we have in place at the club would take care of that. I feel like with having kind of Kieran Scott there, and driving this strategy on the football side of things, we'd be looking for a very similar manager to take over, and kind of we wouldn't have to be rebuilding again in the summer and looking at a completely different formation. It would be finding someone who slot right in and fit work with the players that we have.
Yeah, easy answer. I would agree with that 100%. Dana, you can give me a yes or no answer. Do you think there's any truth in it or not?
You never know, do you? I think question dodging is a little bit unnerving, but I don't think he'll go. But then again, I am a curse, so maybe I should say that he will go so that he won't. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know, but I'd hope that he doesn't. It would take me completely by surprise. I think it'd be really disappointing. I really don't need this right now. I feel so flat after the game today, and I've run out of rosé, so I might need to get another one if that is true.
Okay, then. Well, I don't think he's going anywhere either. And as we release this You Watch, we will have to release it, and then Middlesbrough
do another one.
That's left, and it was like
emergency pod.
Yeah, I'm just having a quick check on Twitter now just to make sure he's not already gone. But
God, can you imagine that?
Going nowhere. He's going to go nowhere, in my opinion. But let's move on to the praise and place, because it's the only place in the podcast where we give praise to players, staff, fans, dinosaurs, or even this week is an Easter egg. Who gets your nomination this week? It is a difficult week because, of the results, not scoring as well, clutching at straws a little bit. The bar could be low. But Dana, who are you going to go for? Who gets your nomination?
Nobody. I can't. I think, like Tom earlier in the pod, I would have gone for Bamba, but he followed it up with a poor performance. Maybe Diet Steel, but I just don't think it's enough to get in it, unfortunately. And this is probably the first time that I haven't had anyone to say, which I think shows how good the players have been this season. But unfortunately, I just don't think I can put anybody in this week.
And Tom and Dana, is anyone going to be in that praise and place this week, or are we going to go with no one?
Yeah, Dana, I'm glad you went first and said that, because I was really thinking nobody as well. I mean, all the way through this pod, since I talked about it earlier, I was like, is there actually anyone I can say? Like, I was kind of putting a case together for Daniels in my head, maybe, but like you say, the bar is very low, and I'd be putting Daniels in the praise and place for doing what's expected of a goalkeeper. So, yeah, I'm going to go with no one as well.
Fair enough. I'll quickly give a shout out to the fans for going to Bournemouth for that kickoff as well. It was on the telly as well. So shout out to the fans for that. But I agree with you. I don't think anyone else gets the position in the present place this week. So that is probably a first for all of us. But let's look ahead now. Let's look ahead to Swansea, because Boro travelled to Wales to play Russell Martin's Swansea City, who drew 4-4 a day, I believe. Is that right? Correct?
They did, yeah. That was the result that relegated Derby, because obviously it was against Reading.
Derby County. So let's move on. Hey.
There's something to smile about today.
The second tiers everywhere. The Swans have had a transitional year under the former MK Dons boss, but the future looks very, very bright. We spoke to Luke from the Swanscast podcast to see what they think about Saturday's game.
Hi lads, thanks for having me on. It's Luke from Swanscast here, doing a quick voice note on my way to Reading at the moment for the away game we've got before your match later the week. So apologies for any background noise. But just a quick insight to how the Swans are looking this season under Russell Martin. Obviously took over at the start of the year. Been a bit of a roller coaster of a campaign for us, really changing the style of play. But recent form has been quite good. I think it's 6 undefeated in a row. One of the major wins in that period was against Cardiff, South Wales derby victory, where actually, if you weren't aware, it's the first time any of the two teams has done a double this season. So quite a big moment for us under Russell Martin. So we wanted to push on from there, and it does look like the club has managed to do so. Had 2 back-to-back wins after that game to cement that as a really good result and a really good week. We drew our last match out against Barnsley, a bit of a tough one, but with the fixtures coming thick and fast, I think you've got to take it sometimes when you get a point and don't lose the match. That's the most important thing. So definitely the form is looking on the upside. The style of play is starting to sort of work for us a bit more than it did perhaps at some points. There are still moments where it doesn't work as well. Obviously still adjusting. The players it's very different to how we were under Steve Cooper. So we tend to pass it around quite a lot from the back, as you might have noticed. That's kind of where we are sometimes weak as well. If you can put the pressure on and get out our back line especially, there are mistakes that can be made. But also at the same time, if it works for us, it makes gaps the other end, and that's where we create a lot of our chances. So looking at where the players that are going to make the biggest impact are, you'd look no further than Joe Boro up front. 20 goals this season in his first year in English football. Very good season for him. Nobody was expecting that when he signed for, I believe, 1.8 million in the summer. Only 22 years old. So very good season from him. Probably going to go into bigger and better things. He'll sit behind just off Michael Obafemi up front. Been a bit quiet in the last few games, but definitely has improved his form in the second half of the season. I think maybe people have been double marking him, and that's been creating the space for Boro. So we'll see how your guys set up and mark those two to see which one perhaps gets the better opportunities. In the centre of the pitch, Matt Grimes, as ever, is the one that controls the play for us. Has done for a couple of years now. Very important part of our squad and being captain as well. Keeps us ticking, keeps the ball rolling. But also, surprisingly perhaps, but Kyle Norton in the centre-back, in the middle of the back three, he's also vital to the way we play. So he does quite a similar role to Grimes, but from the back three, brings the ball out, sprays it around, and I think he's indispensable, really. The form has definitely dipped when he's not been in the team, and he's definitely a shout for one of our players of the season. Looking at the match against you guys then, perhaps I'll have a better indication after the game against Reading today, but I'm hoping to keep our positive end of the season going. I don't think we're in the playoff picture, but it's kind of a fool's hope that we are still there if we go and win the rest of our games potentially. You guys probably looking at it as a more realistic target, so I guess really want to be making sure you win this game, but I guess we're hoping that we can try and make that difficult for you. I'm going to be positive and say we might win the game 2-1, but we'll have to wait and see. Maybe our good form, it's been a couple of games, so I guess a loss is maybe due, but I'll hope for the best and going to stay positive. So I'm going 2-1 to the Swans. Good luck, hope we have a good game over the bank holiday, and shall meet next week. Good luck for the rest of the season. Hope it ends well for you. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming on there, Luke. And one eventful game. It was much more eventful when you went, Tom, when it was a 0-0 draw and you described it as the worst game you've ever seen.
I've said that for about a few games over the years, but that definitely topped a lot.
But here's a fun fact for you, and this is sponsored by the Malt Curse. The Malt Curse, the official sponsor, the official curse of Middlesbrough Football Club. Swansea haven't received a penalty for one whole year. Do you know when the last one was? Against Middlesbrough. And it was that controversial one as well. Dana, as it's the Malt Curse, what is your thoughts and predictions on the game against Swansea?
Did you just do a little Welsh accent at the
end?
Yeah,
I think I
noticed that. Nice one. This is I'm a little bit scared about this one. I did say in the Telegram chat this morning, it's this one and Preston that terrify me a little bit. Not confident. Probably go for surely we can't go another game without a goal. You know what? We probably will. But no, I'll probably go 2-1 Swansea, but slight non-actually footballing point. But Swansea have some fantastically named players from the Marcus Harness School of very satisfying footballing names. They've got Joel Latibaudiere and Ben Cabango, which I think that's probably the best one there, Ben Cabango.
I couldn't even say those words right in front of me. We'll go for a 2-1 Swansea win. Tom, what are you going to go for?
You know what? I'm going another game where we don't score. I'm going to go 0-0. I think it's going to be very similar to Bournemouth. I was going to say last week, but on Friday, I think it's just going to be a tough game. It was at the Riverside, but I think we can probably focus just long enough to get a clean sheet, and I still don't think we'll score.
Well, I think we will. I'm going to go with 1-0 Middlesbrough. And you never know you never know in the Championship. Anything can happen. Not like you two negative ninnies. I will go up. I'll be positive. But that's it. Guys, thank you very much for coming on. To the listeners, thank you very much for listening as well. But we were hoping for a resurrection over Easter, but Boro's promotion egg has started to crack. And hopefully we'll start looking at put back together again. What a mouthful that was. But this has been the Boro Breakdown podcast, and that was all your Boro Match Day chatter in a pod. Up the Boro Breakdown.